Section 17 of Tales of the Samurai by Asataro Miyamori. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Read by Tom Booker. The Story of Kimura Shigenari, Part 2. The year following the events just narrated, the strained relations between the rivals, the Toyotomis and the Tokugawas, snapped, and as had been foreseen, war was declared. The ex-shogun Ieyasu and the reigning shogun Hidetada, with an army of 200,000 men, lay siege to the castle of Osaka, though as yet they did not venture on very close quarters. The besieged troops, though outnumbered by the enemy, were well commanded by numerous veteran generals, and defended themselves with courage and skill. In several small engagements which took place without the castle, Ieyasu's men, ensnared with artfully constructed stratagems, suffered severe defeat. Above all, they sustained signal reverses at the hands of Shigenari, who maneuvered adroitly and fought bravely with his company. The siege lasted several months, and still the brave little garrison held the enemy at bay. With each success, their spirits rose. The shrewd Ieyasu, seeing the impossibility of taking the stronghold by force, and hopeless of starving it out, deemed it would be the best policy to patch up peace in some way, and to trust to the pride and arrogance of the opposing faction to bring about their own downfall. Therefore, most cunningly, through the emperor's mediation, as it seemed, he proposed, nay, almost dictated, peace to Hideyori. Most of his generals, including Sanada Yukimura, chief of the general staff, and Shigenari, considering the present situation favorable to the triumph of their side, emphatically opposed such a fatal act. But Hideyori's infamous and beautiful mother, Madame Yodogimi, who had great influence over her son, being persuaded to that effect by her licentious and thoughtless favorites, who were weary of the confinement necessitated by the siege, threw all the weight of her maternal authority on the acceptance of the terms. Furthermore, the proposal coming from the highest quarter could hardly be slighted. Therefore the defenders were almost without option compelled to agree to the humiliating terms proposed, which were that Hideyori should destroy the outer moat of his castle, to show the sincerity of his peaceful intentions, while Ieyasu, in return, should cede to him the provinces of Ki and Yamato. A day was appointed for the formal signing of the treaty, and Shigenari was nominated special envoy for the occasion, with Kori Shumonesuke for vice-envoy. Ieyasu had the entrance to his camp strictly guarded, and with a view to displaying his authority before all the daimyos assembled to witness the ceremony, he secretly instructed his most trusted generals to humiliate the expected envoys as much as possible. These officers, who felt much chagrin at their frequent defeats, were only too glad to have the opportunity to wreak vengeance on the enemy by affronting their representatives. Shigenari and Shumonosuke arrived on horseback, escorted by a little band of some 80 men. On their appearance before the camp of Todo Takatora, the sentinels one after the other called out, "Halt, sirs! As His Highness's camp is so near, you must dismount." Shumonosuke hurriedly pulled up and was about to get off his horse, but his superior stopped him with a gesture and looked haughtily at the men in front. He cried loudly, "We are Kimura Shigenari and Kori Shumonosuke, the representatives of Lord Toyotomi, Minister of the Right. No code of etiquette requires anyone to dismount before his equal in rank. You are insolent. We proceed." Then Shigenari rode calmly forward, followed by his suite. When the envoys came to General I's camp, his sentinels likewise demanded that they should dismount. Giving the same reply as before, Shigenari, disregarding their attempts to stop him, put spurs to his horse and rode on. At the camp of Lord Echigo, more strenuous efforts were made to force the strangers to proceed on foot. In great wrath, Shigenari protested against such unwarranted discourtesy. "What mean you by such conduct?" he cried. "Judging from our reception, I conclude it is the intention of Ieyasu to disregard the imperial mandate to make peace. Well then, it is useless to go further. We will return at once to the castle and report to our lord the shameful treatment we have received." So saying, he turned his horse and was about to go back, when Lord Echigo's men, seeing they had gone too far, apologized profusely and begged him to pass on to fulfill his mission. At length the envoys came to the entrance of the building where they were to meet the great ex-shogun. Here they dismounted, and carrying their swords were about to enter, when two ushers intercepted them, crying, "Your weapons must be left without." In no wise discomposed, Shigenari said sternly, "It is a rule with a samurai never to leave his sword behind when he goes into an enemy's camp, on any pretext whatever." This being an indisputable fact, the ushers could say no more, but led them armed as they were to the spacious apartment which had been prepared for the ceremony. A large number of daimyos already occupied their places on two sides of the room. With a manner composed and dignified, Shigenari strode into the assembly in no whit daunted by the many hostile looks cast upon him, and took the seat to which he was directed in the center, facing at a short distance the dais prepared for Ieyasu when he should choose to make his appearance. Shumanosuke closely followed the deportment of his chief, and took his seat beside him. Two masters of the ceremonies informed them that his highness would be there presently. "And," they added, "as it is disrespectful to carry swords in his august presence, you will kindly take them to the antechamber and leave them there." "Disrespectful?" thundered Shigenari in tones that reverberated through the hall. "To whom do you address such a word? Recollect that we are the honorable representatives of the Minister of the Right. The disrespect is on your side, and if you repeat your insolence, you will have to answer for it." And he glared so fiercely on the two officials that they withdrew in consternation. In a short time Ieyasu, accompanied by many attendants, made his appearance, and with impressive solemnity took his seat. All the daimyos bowed reverently, and awed by his majestic demeanor and the example of others, Shumanosuke did the same. But Shigenari deigned to give the great statesman but the slightest acknowledgment, and calmly looked him straight in the face. "I am glad to see you, Shigenari," said Ieyasu mildly. "Thank you for coming on this important mission. Your father Hitachi no Suke and I were intimate friends, and I am much indebted to him." "Pardon me, your highness," replied Shigenari, "but today I am the messenger of the Minister of the Right, and private matters are out of place." The tactful Ieyasu, though put in the wrong, showed not the slightest trace of embarrassment. Producing a document from a receptacle in his hand, He passed it to Shigenari by an attendant, and said quietly, "Kindly see that this is correct, Shigenari." Shigenari carefully read over the paper, which ran as follows. In compliance with an imperial edict, Ieyasu and Hideyori agree to make peace, on the sole condition that Hideyori fill up the outer moat of his castle as a token of his peaceful intentions. Either of the parties concerned who first appeals to arms henceforth shall be guilty of disobeying the imperial mandate and shall be treated accordingly. Keicho 19, 12th month, 27th day. As he read, Shigenari's face grew darker and darker, and when he came to the end he started to his feet and exclaimed indignantly, "Are these your terms of peace, your highness? If so, you have already disobeyed the imperial command. Prepare!" Sword in hand, it seemed as if he were about to attack the old statesman. All present started up and sought to intercept the thrust. Ieyasu, alarmed, raised both hands in deprecation and bade the young man resume his seat. "Calm yourself, I pray you," he said hastily. "Old age makes me forgetful. By mistake, I have shown you the wrong paper. Here is the right one." The crafty statesman produced another document from the case he held and handed it to Shigenari. It is hardly necessary to explain that this was an artifice. Ieyasu had caused to be prepared two documents in different terms. Should the envoys accept the first, in which all the advantage was on his side, his intention was to keep back the other, in which were stated the real conditions of the treaty. Shigenari had been too astute for him. He now examined the new document, which read thus: Vows of Peace. Article 1. In compliance with an imperial command, Ieyasu and Hideyori vow to make peace and to enter into friendly relations. Article 2. Hideyori shall destroy the outer moat of his castle, and Ieyasu shall in return cede to him the provinces of Ki and Yamato by January next. Article 3. Immediately on the signing of the vows of peace, Ieyasu shall disband his army and depart for Yamato. Article 4. Either of the parties who violates the above vows and resorts to arms shall be found guilty of disobedience to the imperial command and shall be punished by the gods. Keicho 19, 12th month, 27th day. Shigenari read the paper carefully several times. "This is correct, your highness. Be pleased to put your signature and seal." Ieyasu complied. The envoy, receiving it back, put it into a bag made of rich brocade. Then, bowing courteously, he said gravely, though not without a touch of sarcasm, "I beg to congratulate your highness." Then, turning to the assembled daimyos, he bowed to them also, saying, "I thank you for your attendance." Receiving their salutations in return, he once more made an obeisance to Ieyasu. "Allow me to take my leave, your highness. Farewell, your highness, and your excellencies." With graceful courtesy he bowed once more, and with his subordinate left the audience chamber. All were constrained to admire his noble bearing and courage. End of section 17.